Caleb coming in here like, for whom the bell tolls title.
Murray Kiyashiro.
So is that the start of our episode now?
Tolls.
Yeah, this feels like an intro to our podcast.
Welcome to the one about Godzilla movies, and my name is Caleb, and I lost my show notes. Dang it, there it is. This is episode 11.
And also
Welcome.
I'm Brian.
I'm Caleb. That's Brian. I was literally about to say this is episode 11. I'm Caleb. This is Brian. We'll cut that out, make it look like we redid it. 3, 2, 1. I'm Caleb. This is episode 11. That's Brian.
And I'm Brian. I talked over you again.
3, 2, 1. I'm Caleb. This is episode 11, and that's Brian. So before we jump in, have you heard of this podcast, My Brother and Me? Are you familiar with the McElroy brothers at all?
No.
No?
I'm not the podcasting guru that you are, you know?
Interesting. Well, if you're ever just looking to laugh at listening to like three brothers just be ridiculous and do like what they call it's like people send them questions of like, hey, what should I do? This person in my office is a butt face kind of deal. And then they just like argue with each other about what the solution should be. And it's always like the most brash, just like awful
send
thing.
That to me.
Yeah. So big shout out to those guys. I just started listening to it recently. It's called My Brother and Me.
Dude, I'm about to, I need to mow the lawn tomorrow. Maybe I need that, you know?
There you go. Yeah. And they do these, I get like they're comedians and so they tour. And so any of their episodes that are labeled face to face are like live shows. And then otherwise it's just an actual podcast. So yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So episode 11, this is actually a show about movies, to deal with a very specific kaiju named Godzilla. And we're working through the anthology, the discography, the collection of films produced by Toho.
If you're an aficionado, you might see this episode and wonder why we are reacting to this film in particular. But we have a good reason.
Yeah, and it was your idea. I think you should.
Yeah.
Lead it off for us.
My thinking is, so there are a lot of Toho Kaiju films, but not all of them intersect with the Godzilla world. However, there are some non-Godzilla related Kaiju films that have an origin for a character that shows up at least once, if not multiple times later in the franchise. And so we thought it'd be a good idea to include a few of those Kaiju movies that are going to be sort of a regular player in the Godzilla franchise. So Rodan is one of those. And that's what we watched today.
Yeah. So 1956, this was the next Kaiju film from Toho after Godzilla Raids Again, which is what was that called? Is it actually Godzilla Raids Again, or was it?
Yeah,
it was Godzilla Raids Again, 1955. Yep. I was thinking because they titled it differently for America because us Americans.
Well, they made a whole different movie out of it. It really wasn't Godzilla anymore.
They sure did. And you know what? They did that like 4 or 5 more times. I was looking earlier at some other stuff that's just like blew my mind. This one included. They did this one. I have here 1, 2, 3. I have 4 alternate titles for this movie for when it was released. It was released in 20 different countries.
Oh, wow.
And in almost every country, it got a different title.
Didn't know that.
And I've pulled 4 of my favorite.
Caleb, is that a trivia item at the start of the show?
I guess so. We're hurting for content on this one, all right?
See, this is why our listeners need to just listen to every episode. You never know what order things are going to happen in.
Yeah, because it's your show.
It's not because we're ADD. That's not the reason.
No, it's just because I thought it was appropriate, even though it is technically trivia. It's to deal just with the title of the movie. So, So Rodan, the literal Japanese title is Giant Monster of the Sky Rodan.
I saw that in the opening titles in the movie itself. And it
Yeah.
was like translated that way.
The Japanese 8mm title, though, is Mahakaiju Radan. I don't know if you noticed that they call it Radon, not Rodan. It was changed for.
I think that one you just said is the one that was like on screen when I was
So we must
watching
have
it.
watched the 8mm version then when we, or you know.
Maybe.
Yeah. So Mahakaiju Radan or Mach Monster Rodan. There's a whole Rodan Radon thing that's in trivia later. So and then Rodan, Bird of Death. That was the title in Poland. And in Spain, the title was The Sons of the Volcano. Sons of the Volcano. So, yeah, I don't know. Just some fun, different title variations for this kaiju movie about Rodan. So, yeah, we'll show era movie. Where do you want to go? You want me to do a little TLDR, or you want to just jump into
Yeah, what's the rundown?
your thoughts?
What do we need to know about this?
Basically, we've got this dude, Shigeru, who is a mining engineer, and there's been a few of his like coworkers who just kind of like disappear and are dead, and they discover these like prehistoric, gigantic, like nymph dragonfly larva things coming out of the mines after an attack from these things in the local village. This dude Shigeru heads deeper and deeper into the mines, gets attacked by these things, and then makes a pretty horrifying discovery in the form of this giant flying creature. And then soon enough, a second one of those shows up, and they have to figure out a way to defeat them.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty
Yeah.
good description.
Yeah.
Not a very long film. It's only like an hour 20 at best.
Boy, it
Uh,
felt longer than that.
did a little bit. Did a little bit. I'm guessing this one isn't very high on your list of favorite Toho films.
No, I think this is probably only the second time I've ever seen it. I remember watching it on TV, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So maybe third time or something. But like, because I definitely remembered bits and pieces of it, especially like the monster, the little like nymph things and their like clicking noise. And the dude, like his amnesia and stuff, like that whole like him losing his mind, that whole sequence. I remember that. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah. I don't think this one
no,
has as much depth. You know, some listeners may disagree. Maybe they're a Rodan mega fan. That rhymed.
you're a poet and you didn't even know it.
But my opinion is my own, and for that reason, I don't think we have as much to say about this film today. But I did take some notes. I don't know if you have any notes, Caleb.
Yeah, I've got a couple. I'll just say, like, before we jump in, like you said at the beginning, though, like it was worth the watch to just kind of understand what Rodan is or where it comes from or the whole idea, because it just pops up in other movies going forward, and there isn't really an origin story for it if you
Quite
don't
a
go
lot of
looking
them,
for it.
right?
So,
Kind of a regular player.
yeah. Actually, quite a bit. We're gonna go to Planet X eventually with Rodan
Cool.
as like a friend to Godzilla. No
Oh,
spoilers.
and
Anyways,
you can confirm this, but a film we've already talked about in this series wasn't the 2019 Godzilla film from Legendary. Didn't it at least briefly feature Rodan as one of the monsters? Am I right on that?
it's Godzilla King of the Monsters with King Ghidorah.
Hmm.
Rodan is also in that, and yeah, there's a pretty
Okay,
big
I thought
fight.
so.
There's a pretty big chase scene between Rodan and that giant, like, their giant
Mhm.
flying fortress, the
Yeah.
Marvel, the not Marvel version of the giant flying fortress, and they're flying this thing towards Ghidorah in his like tropical storm or its
Okay.
tropical storm or whatever, to because Rodan is chasing them, and they're like, we can't beat this thing, we just have to go. So they're like leading it to Ghidorah,
Yeah.
and at the last second
I
they
didn't
pull
remember
up,
them
and then
like
the two of them fight. But
naming all of them. But
Rodan nips a couple planes out of the sky. I guess the director's in one of those planes. As
okay.
like a little cameo deal.
That was one of the main four then, sort of
Yeah,
like the climate, like the end of that film then.
yeah, yeah.
But I just don't remember
Yeah,
the
and
name being mentioned in that film.
uh,
Maybe.
yeah, they say it once or twice for sure, and it's on a screen a couple of times as like as they identify the kaiju, and
Hmm.
but yeah, they definitely say the name a couple times.
Nice. Yeah, well, probably more
See,
people have seen that film. So if you've seen King of the Monsters, we're talking about the origin of that character today.
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
this film is not from 2019; it's from 1956. Um,
It's the year. Fun fact: the year my dad was born. I could have saved that for trivia, but I didn't. You're
oh,
welcome.
cool, nice. This is like the third kaiju film ever made, I believe. Um, is also, I don't know if you noticed this. Significant to me is the first Toho film and the first kaiju film in color.
Yeah, pretty sweet.
It just happened to be the first kaiju film in color, also their first color film, Toho. They did a good bit of black and white releases before the release of this film, so maybe I'm not entirely sure, but I think all their films after 1956 were in some sort of color. It's not like
Yes.
a very colorful film, but it is in color.
Mm-hmm.
It's like very kind of desaturated and brown and stuff. Actually, like within like the first 15 minutes, I found myself thinking back to our conversation about Godzilla minus one and sort of like the color grading to that film, where it's like it's not like a very vibrant color scape. It's just kind of like browns and greens and
Mm-hmm.
not like this one isn't like super well lit. Just kind of grungy. It's not
Yeah.
very crisp or clear. It's just kind of old looking, but it is in color, so you can like distinguish some things in the image differently than you could in black and white, just because of that extra dimension, if you will, being added. So I thought that was cool. Yeah.
I don't think we've used or come across this phrase before, and I'm kind of surprised that we haven't. But apparently, this is a very specific kind of, not specific kind, but it is a kind of a kind of kaiju film. They call it tokusatsu,
Hmm.
and that is the fact that they try to do as much live action and like practical effects and stuff, and it's kind of like it's a contraction of two words that come out to mean like special photography basically, and kind of like
Hmm.
their word for special effects basically. So I found
Oh,
that, so yeah,
cool.
that's fun.
Yeah. Well, as previously stated, not that long of a film. I have some notes. Should I full send? Full send, baby.
Yeah. I just realized I did want to say, yeah, the color thing. It's it's kind of it's interesting to me. Like, yeah, I don't know, like maybe that's exactly what you just said, was that like it reminded you of Godzilla minus one, that even minus one wasn't a very vibrant. It also looked kind of grungy and
Yeah.
not very, yeah, like I said, not very vibrant or anything, and kind of matched that kind of like, the first time Toho had done a color kaiju film was this one, and we'll kind of
Yeah.
see that color style is pretty standard for the first, for the next couple films at least, until they start figuring that kind of stuff out. But yeah,
Yeah. It just
full
made me
send.
think that like this was kind of the era that they were kind of maybe trying to emulate that look. I was like,
Yeah,
this looks
absolutely.
the same.
Yeah, yeah,
This is
yeah.
the OG though.
Sure is.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. It was in color. Um, there were a couple names being thrown around. there's a guy named Goro. I think he was someone that had gone missing or um, ended up
Yeah, he's someone that
being.
goes missing right at the beginning.
Yeah,
Yeah, Goro, Goro.
that just stood out to me because there's a prominent Japanese character in a game called Cyberpunk 2077,
Hmm.
his first name is Goro. So they refer to him as Takamura, but his first name is Goro. So I was like, a Japanese name that's been around for a while. Also, there's a dude named Yoshi, and I was like, I'm not sure I knew Yoshi was like a regular old Japanese name.
Yeah, I didn't catch
When
that. That's
Nintendo really
interesting.
took that one over. I don't know, that just tickled me a little bit.
Right.
Um,
Nobody's been named Yoshi since like 1983 or whenever the video game came out first.
Probably, maybe, I don't know. I've never been to Japan, so. Other things I liked, there's moments in
Title.
the film where there's sort of like maybe what they think is an earthquake. It's sort of like this implosion happens in a mountain. It just looks really cool. They sort of had like this, it's like a miniature thing that they're blowing up, but they had sort of like this red earth thing going on where you got like this nice green texture to, I don't know, the grass or the foliage or whatever we're supposed to be looking at. It's a miniature, but
Hmm.
but they went with sort of like that red earth vibe. Kind of was a cool contrast to sort of see the implosion. Um, and it turns
And I
out to be
wonder
like
if it was.
activity from Rodan, if I'm understanding it correctly. But
Yeah, I was trying to figure out if it was supposed to be like if it's because it was like they're on a volcano or
yeah,
what. But
yeah, I don't know. Man, so many miniatures. So
hmm
I'm guessing we'll have to look at the end, but I'm guessing they had a little more time with this one. Definitely a lot of miniature work. Because like there's sort of like this idea of like uh, wind or like supersonic speed or things with Rodan. There was a lot of like wind elements in some of like the battle sequences in this film, and so honestly, I'm looking at the screen. I'm like, I feel like they built all these houses out of paper mache. It just looks like they're taking a leaf blower to it because there's just like this natural wind thing going on, just like tearing these houses apart. And it
yeah,
looks really cool. I was like, that's for sure a leaf blower. It's got to be what that is. Um, I'd love to see behind the scenes of that. Just like a dude taking a leaf blower to a city made of paper mache. So, yeah, it looks really cool. We also have sort of like the multiple Rodan thing. Um, I can't call it a callback, more of a call forward, but it reminded me very much of the 2014 Godzilla, where there's this singular Muto they're kind of going after, and then there's this moment in the film where they're like, "Oh my god, there's another one," and they're like pointing at it and stuff, and it comes in.
yeah.
Of course, in that film, they're like vastly different sizes, and there's like some distinction between them. This one, they're kind of like just doing the same thing, but makes me wonder if they sort of took that idea from this film, or
Well,
maybe we're
so
intending it to be an homage, or I don't know.
yeah, I don't. Well, but also like so Rodan is well, and they do this a lot through the whole series. Like somebody a kaiju dies and there's just another one. So I've just kind of taken it to mean, and we see this in there's an anime called Godzilla Singular Point on Netflix. That Rodan is a species, and there are just multiple of them.
Hmm.
And in Singular Point, they like are so numerous that they like blot out the sun at one point in that anime. So yeah, and they're all basically like the same size, and they all have the same powers, and it's pretty freaking crazy. So
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah,
There's like a volcano that gets tipped off in this film, and so they had like sort of these lava simulations going on, and it looks kind of like looked like a really polished version of something that some kids would cook up in science class in like middle school or something.
yeah,
But I was just I'm like, this doesn't look like molten lava, but it looks really cool. Like, I think they did a great job with it. I was just appreciating it. I thought it looked cool, even though, like, I know because it's 2024 and I've seen drone footage of an actual lava flow. I'm spoiled.
Right.
I do actually know what
Yeah.
that looks like.
Yeah.
Maybe someone in 1956 doesn't really know what that looks like. But, yeah.
Well, and for doing this all with miniatures and like that kind of stuff
Hmm.
is pretty cool.
Yeah.
It certainly is it's an art form that I am now starting to really appreciate the more and more we watch these movies.
Yeah. It's just a
So,
bunch of dudes just building stuff. And, I mean, the lava was like flowing maybe like a little too quick, but they got the color pretty good. Like they had some close ups where there was like actual flames burning, which you would see near like an
mm,
actual lava flow. I don't know, it looks cool. So yeah, those are some things I appreciated. I also have some criticisms, but I don't know if you have any other things you want to touch on that you appreciated
yeah,
or noticed or
I did. Finally a bit of like actual military technology. There were like some
hmm.
tanks and rockets. Like this is,
And some miniature
you know,
tanks. I don't know if you noticed that. It looked like they're
yeah,
had some
yeah.
like
Little
remote
like
control
art.
tanks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out they were RC. Like I noticed lots of like you notice lots of cables, lots of like that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I just thought some of the I thought some of the way that like things would blow up. I need you to not be one. I
Maybe not necessary,
yeah.
but
Oh yeah, the little miniature freaking tanks and like you can see wires and stuff. I thought that the like there's one point where like Rodan like slices a plane in half and you just kind of see it like boo like somebody literally just pulled up on where the cockpit should be, like the string attached to the cockpit, and you just saw it go Pew! That looked pretty funny. But yeah, I just in general, and I think we kind of touched on this already. I really appreciated the attempt at new filming styles, and their new like more interaction with the miniatures than we saw in like Godzilla, or Godzilla Raids Again, right? Yeah, just
do you
more
have like an
intention in them, and
example?
maybe it's just because things were in color
Mm,
now that like the miniatures stood out more.
could be.
I don't know. I felt like Godzilla and Godzilla Raids Again were both too dark sometimes to really appreciate the detail of what was happening,
Mm,
or the detail of their models and the detail of their miniatures and stuff. So I think that's just something that suffers from the technology that they had to capture at the time. So,
mm,
but yeah, the one
yeah.
thing that I thought was really really weird, and I will say this is pretty much my like the one point in the film that I was just like, what were they even thinking? Because it's kind of like along the lines of the lava thing, but a little bit worse. Was anytime there was like footage of a dude in a plane, the clouds were going sideways behind him. Like, but he's
Mm.
flying forward, so clouds should be going this way, and they were traveling behind him sideways, as if he were traveling sideways in his plane, and that really bothered me.
I'm like super surprised I didn't notice that.
Yeah,
Mm.
they did it like 3 or 4 times. In it's like when it's whoever the first pilot is that experiences Rodan. It's like it's this thing going supersonic and like they cut to the dude in the plane in the fighter, and it's just clouds going sideways behind him.
Dude, the first time they said that, I actually like Googled when the first supersonic jet was made, and it was like in the late 40s. It was like far earlier than I would have guessed.
Wow,
But they
that's
made a
cool.
comment about like this thing is moving way faster than our technology allows for, or something. I was like, oh, wonder like what the fastest plane at the time was. You know, it feels
Yeah,
like a very time boxed comment. Um, but something that had already been attempted and succeeded, I guess, before that point by the U.S. Of course, cheeseburger bang bang.
classic, classic cheeseburger bang bang America. I think that's the end of the positives. Let's move on
Yeah,
to the criticisms.
criticisms. Um, there was just like a lot of that larvae in the beginning. I feel like that took up more of the film than it needed to. Film probably
Seriously.
could have been an hour. If you like trim some of that up, there's just like a lot of like this bug larvae thing crawling around, and it didn't look very cool. As soon as like they kind of shifted over to Rodan, like they clearly like had a lot more going on, but that it was just a little too long for me. That just gonna call it the larvae. I don't know if there's a different term, but the Rodan larvae is what I'm calling it.
It's Meganolon.
Meganolon? Is it
Hmm.
not larvae? Am I wrong?
It is a larva. Yeah, it's a dragonfly nymph kaiju.
Okay,
There's a there's an adult version that appears in another movie, but this is in the larva stage. It is
but this is not the
Meganolon.
larval stage of Rodan.
Oh no!
No,
This is not the larval stage of
because of the
Rodan.
egg thing.
No. Yeah, this is they just kind of like appear where he
So
does, and Rodan
I
eats
guess
them.
that like reinforces what I was thinking. It just kind of felt like that was separate from the point of the film, which was Rodan. I don't know. They
Yeah.
were just doing this whole thing with the mines.
Well, and
Um,
I think it was probably a how do we introduce Rodan, or how do we like get something going where they don't just like dig in a mine and oh my god, it's a giant egg, you know?
hmm,
And they were definitely going for, I know it doesn't stand up today, but in this is considered in Japan a horror movie at the time, and was considered to be even more of a horror movie than Godzilla was. So
interesting.
even though they stand out and are really annoying now, I
Hmm,
think the I think they were just so wild and out there for the time. But yeah, I don't know. They definitely spent too much time for sure. But I think it was an intentional choice. Other than like I said, other than just like, well, how do we introduce Rodan other than just like, oh gosh, we found a giant egg, because then the movie's only an hour long, right? Like, and I
which I
guarantee you,
think may
somebody
have
at
been
Toho
improved,
said
but
it
yeah, at
needs to be
least.
more than an hour. Get us another kaiju in there, and yeah,
Hmm. Which, I guess was invented. It's not like they were shoehorning in another known kaiju. Like they were making this stuff up. So,
yeah.
anyways, this larvae was on screen a long time. The sound this larvae was making sounded exactly like a broken treadmill that needs WD 40. It was like this, literally like a squeaky rubber belt. It was so annoying to me
Just
forever. This
yeah.
sound. I it definitely sounded like a rubber belt of some kind that just needed some WD 40. I'm like, this doesn't sound like an animal. Come on.
For real.
Yeah, the image quality, the color's nice. The image quality in this one's just not as good. It's kind of grungy. The first two Godzilla films, um, I watched them from a copy from the Criterion Collection. It's called. I don't know if you know what the Criterion Collection is.
Hmm.
They do a lot of work in basically restoring and remastering important films. Of course, important is subjective, but they'll work with studios to do remastering work for things that are considered to be of like historical significance. Just kind of really like maybe it's a new reel scan, maybe they do some frame by frame restoration, maybe it's like clearing up some damaged stuff. But anyways, they do some good work, and the first two Godzilla films are in the Criterion Collection, so that's nice. So if you go watch those films, pretty much anywhere you can find them to watch, they'll probably be that version, which is kind of a nice quality. This film is not in the Criterion Collection, so a little more grungy. Um, Yeah, the guy who played Serizawa, the important scientist from the very original Godzilla film, is also a major character in this film.
Hmm.
I don't know if you noticed that. Just the same actor, completely different character. Um,
They do that a lot.
yeah, I'm guessing they do. I've seen some other Japanese films from the 50s, and it seems very common to just kind of keep casting some of the same actors in
Well,
completely different roles. So,
homeboy Shigeru-san, the main character, he is in like 20 plus movies, 20 plus Godzilla movies as different characters
really,
because Honda liked him so much after this movie.
that is funny. So, I'm against that, but no one cares what I think. It was 70 years ago, you know.
Yeah, but it would literally be like
But I recognize him. I was like, hey, that's wait a minute.
it would literally be like if somebody made a series of movies about this family that drives cars really fast, and they were all like, never mind, that fell apart really quick because they're all the same character. Damn it! Uh,
You tried.
I tried. Moving on.
Moving on. There's a
It's
sequence in the
Monday.
film where they're establishing these different series and like news anchors or someone like talking about the supersonic Rodan flying around and being loud and stuff, and they're like arguing about whether it's a new what is it? Is it a UFO? What is this thing in the sky? These establishing shots they did of these other cities. Uh, there's like maybe three or four of them, and like two or three of them are just like a matte painting, and it's like clear that they're expecting us to believe that it's like real footage of the real place. And I was like, come
Yeah.
on, you phoned that in so hard. The final one of
Well,
the sequence is like a real window and plant built in a studio, but there's like a matte painting behind it. And there's just this slow pan. They started this really close up of the window, like it's this really cinematic shot, and slowly pan over to the person. But it's just very obvious that it's like some plants and then like 2 feet and then the wall that's been painted to look like a mountain. It's like it was not blending well for me.
yeah, no, not at all.
It felt
Well, and
lazy to me.
also the whole like when like they don't want to show Rodan for at first, but he's like flying around,
Hmm.
and that's just clearly like airplane footage that you just like put some sound effects over. Talk about phoned it in. Like it's literally just a jet in the sky going fast, and you
Yeah,
put
I made a
some.
comment about here about that sound. Like they clearly have like the cutout of Rodan like in the sky, and they're sort of like swinging it along or something. But it's literally just the sound of a jet. I'm like, I mean,
We
I
get it,
understand that it's
supersonic, but like
fast, but that doesn't mean that it would sound like a jet engine.
yeah,
Those are different things. I
there was an
mean,
attempt.
I'm guessing a lot of people weren't familiar with like the sounds of jets, maybe at the time.
Title.
That title's too long. I can tell you right now. The scene where we see Rodan hatching out of an egg, like the cracking is really cool. Like you said, there's supposed to be like
La la la.
this like horror element. And then it pops
Yeah,
out and it looks like a Muppet. It to me
because it actually is. It's a puppet. It was literally a puppet.
it looks like Gonzo's cousin. I don't know why. It just looks like a Muppet to me.
Just yeah,
I feel like they could have done a little more texture work or something.
a little too much like Fraggle Rock.
Hmm. Yeah, actually, does look a lot like that. And I haven't even seen that. I agree. Oh my gosh. I wrote down there are more explosions than any story in this film.
Wait a minute, that should have been a title ding. A little bit like Fraggle Rock.
Looks a little bit like Fraggle Rock.
Yeah.
That would be good.
But also what you just said, title, more explosions. What did you just say? There were more explosions than what?
There are more explosions than story.
Yeah,
Uh,
title.
yeah. Anyways,
My favorite part. My favorite part was like explosions that they clearly just like it did it right in front of the camera lens that were not happening on whatever the pre-film footage was. They're just like, we'll add it in post, and then in post was just like
in front of a
film it
projector
again
screen or
with
something.
in front of a projector screen with a sparkler in front of the freaking camera. Like,
Yeah, that went on for a very long time. I think too long. And I was like, man, those pyro guys had a lot of fun. They were just explosions, more
we
explosions,
need more
explosions,
time. Yeah,
more
do it
explosions.
again.
Um, which I'm sure was very fun for them. I don't know if all of that served the story, but there were definitely some really cool shots. Some of them didn't feel like they really added much or lined up well, but they were just kind of
Well,
blowing some stuff up.
yep.
There is at least one shot where you can see the strings where they're dangling Rodan.
There are several
Several
shots.
shots. You can literally just see the
Yes.
strings going up and down, and they're like puppeting it. It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, couldn't you use fishing line or something that you don't really see? Like, I'm pretty sure that's how they used to do it. So I don't know why those shots weren't like that. It was like clearly like black thread or I don't know what it was. For like the little flying model where they're like making the wings flap or whatever with like
Yeah.
4 to 6 lines attached to it. I don't know. Like, oop,
Oop.
got a little peek behind the curtain there.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much all I got.
Yeah, and I could just kind of chime along with you. So let's do some trivia.
Yeah.
Act trivia. Bow. So we've talked about him quite a bit. Shigeru-san, the main character. He was played by a guy named Kenji Sahara, and this was his like first major role in a movie, like kind of first like, starring. But because Ishiro Honda liked him so much because of the like amount of study he put into his role, he got, like I mentioned earlier, he got hired for over 20 more kaiju films and TV shows in the Showa and Heisei eras. So, yeah, one of the notes I found from production was that he took his character's amnesia very seriously, and he studied the condition's cases and practiced making his eyes go out of focus, and at one point worked himself into such a state that he kicked a table, suffered bumps and bruises, and ripped his pants, which sounds like a pretty typical Saturday night to me.
Title. I have one to interject. You probably have more items than I do, but I have an
Okay.
answer for the Rodan thing. Apparently,
Yeah.
at the time, there's a soap in the U.S. called Radon, and that's why it was named Rodan in English.
Interesting. There's
Yeah,
also a gas on the periodic table named radon,
that's true.
and it'll kill you. So that's pretty fun. Yeah. No, really, like a lot of homes and stuff. Like I remember, oh yeah, it was when we built this house, and before they even like dug the land for the basement that I'm now sitting in, they had to like test the ground and the ground around the whole place for radon, and like so many feet deep into the ground and stuff too. And we have like a crazy vent system that will like that's like down into the ground and will, if radon ever starts leaking in underneath the house, it'll pull that out and vent it outside, and then it's harmless because it's not concentrated. I don't. This has been chemistry with Caleb. It's a podcast inside a podcast where I half-heartedly talk about stuff that I only know because of my dad, because he had to do it for work.
Yeah.
Yeah, more trivia. Go ahead.
Um,
Or do you want to go? You want to bounce it back and forth? Do you want me to do another one?
I don't have too many other ones that were standing out to me. I do see here that the Rodan flying props, they like had like 5 different versions, like 5 different sizes. I'm guessing that was just for different focal lengths, different scenes where it's like far away or close, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe just like one of those 5 had like black lines holding it up or something. Um, yeah.
The Rodan. Anytime there was like a big version of Rodan that was like Rodan was a person in a suit. There are a couple of flying shots where it is the dude in a suit. But also like when he comes up out of the ground for the first time and they found him on the side of the mountain. The dude in the suit is the same guy that plays Godzilla.
Oh,
Haru Nakajima. Nakajima?
they put the veteran in
Nakajima.
there.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. So this is he's literally never done a kaiju role other than Godzilla. And this was his first ever, his second kaiju role. And he was also in one of the giant Megalodon things at one point too. So
I hate that sound so much.
Those things are terrifyingly dumb. Title.
So
Go ahead.
Rodan's original Japanese name, which is Radon, is, I guess, supposed to be short, like an abbreviation of the Japanese word for pterodon, which is pteranodon. I don't
Yeah, it's like
understand how that
pterodon, but
works.
with a whole bunch of like peas at the beginning. I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
And I don't mean vegetables. La la la. Freaking Smith's lyric over here.
What is happening? Why do you keep doing that? La la la.
It's my it's my
Oh my
it's my
gosh.
impersonation of the guy from the Smiths. La la la. He only ever sings the third. Anyways.
This is going downhill fast.
It's a
I'm not
short
seeing
one.
anything else in this trivia that I care about. So
Cool. I got a couple more for you.
sick.
It was theatrically released in Japan as a double feature with Nimuri Kayashiro. And Nimuri Kayashiro is, I had this ready and now I don't. Gosh dang it. Nimuri Kayashiro is Journal of an Outlaw. And it was a story based on a novel by, written in the 40s, I think.
This
The
was the
Journal
other
of an
film that was
Outlaw.
shown.
This is the other film that it was a double feature of. Journal of an Outlaw introduces the master of the full moon cut till the silver screen. Nihilistic swordsman, his own unique set of principles. It's basically a Shogun era samurai film about an outlaw samurai. So, yeah. You get a little horror, you get a little, little Shogun drama, some kissy probably. I couldn't find anything more about this movie other than that. Like, even IMDb didn't have anything about it. I'm on some, what is this, SamuraiDVD.com is where I've eventually found something about this movie.
Send me the name of that, and also that
It
podcast you
is
mentioned.
it is in our notes thing.
Sick.
It's in my trivia section.
Perfect.
And then there was an English dub of the movie that again they like cut up and like did some extra stuff for. Couple of things to note about it though were the dub for this was done at Metro Goldwyn Mayer Studios in California
MGM,
in 3 days. 3 days by 4 men and 2 women.
One of
Who
them was
voiced
George Takei.
all of the parts, and one of them is George Takei. Yep.
Not the first film that he's done a voice in.
No, but it was his first film doing voiceover.
I think he did it for the last movie. I want to say that
Where
I
did
remember
see?
pulling that up before. Let's see if I can find what that was. I think it was Godzilla Rays Again, but let me confirm. So
On the Rodan Wikizilla, so it has all the parts, including George Takei, better known as Sulu.
here it is.
Yeah.
The Godzilla Rays
It was
Again. He
Takei's
voiced.
first professional acting role. That's just wrong then, because he was also.
Yeah, he voiced the commander of landing craft in the English version of Godzilla Raids Again.
Did Godzilla Raids Again come out before Rodan?
No. Mm-hmm. Year before.
Did the U.S. version? It did. Did the U.S. version came out the year before?
No, that would be why. Because it was named that really weird. Oh, what's it called?
Gigantus the Fire Monster, or
right?
Something stupid.
It was released a little bit later.
Right.
So, yeah. Okay.
Huh. So the wiki's not wrong. That's fun.
Cool.
These dang community edited. Can't trust him for anything.
So his second job,
all up here in the cloud,
was a re-release of Godzilla Rays Again.
Huh. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Nice.
So, yeah, that's some trivia for you.
Yeah, budget was $500,000, and the opening weekend was $500,000 supposedly.
Huh.
That's what it says on IMDb. Hopefully, that's accurate.
Yeah. If not, don't
and
write
I guess
us.
a lot of that budget went to shooting in color.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So,
because color
more expensive than black and white at the time, I think.
Color was fairly new at that point, right?
No.
Or was it just that Toho had not invested?
No, actually, I actually learned a little bit more about this when I was doing some research on all of the Oscar-winning films. And when I was doing that, I learned in the Oscar category for Best Cinematography, there is actually 2 awards given for a long period of time because they give an award for Best Cinematography Black and White Film and Best Cinematography Color Film.
Interesting.
And that started in 1936, believe it or not, is when that category started. So, as early as 1936, color film was possible, and things had been shot in color. The film that won for color that year was called The Garden of Allah, and it's in color. And that went all the way until the 60s, I want to say, the double award, till 66 maybe, I want to say. So for about 30 years, almost exactly. There was sort of this transitional period from black and white being the primary to color being the primary.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think of The Wizard of Oz being a big moment where people were like, whoa, because it's the film that started in black and white, and then they masked it so that she walks out and all of a sudden she's in color, and that was a very memorable moment for a lot of people. But
that's the Garden of Allah you're talking about?
No, The Wizard of Oz.
Oh yeah, Wizard of Oz. Sorry,
I was reading. Big moment.
Yeah.
So
I remember the first time I saw that movie, being a kid and being like, oh, I guess I didn't, it kind of struck me. I was like, oh, I guess I didn't even realize it had been in black and white up to this point. Or I had maybe noticed when I first started watching, but it just was, I was so absorbed in it.
And to be clear, that came out in 39, The Wizard of Oz came out, which was basically year 3 of them doing an Oscar for Best Cinematography and Color.
It's a pretty big year for fashion. A lousy year for rock and roll.
Title.
You said The Garden of Allah. Now I just had that Don Henley song stuck in my head. Now that I have your attention, I've got something I want to say. You may not want to hear it.
Is the thing you want to say that our episode's ending? Because I don't have anything more.
My fanciest sucker suit.
We gotta do
is all soaking wet. In the Garden of Allah, Apparently, I'm just going to start singing
I'd
at
like
the
to
end of
offer
our
my
episodes now.
apologies to you if you've been listening this long. We need to give our ratings
So I gave
before
this a
this recording hits an
rating
hour.
of 5 stars.
Out of 30?
10.
Well, 5 out of 10. Fair enough. I gave it 3 out of 5. Why do we never use the same scale?
I don't know, because you usually use the bigger scale, and so I finally switched over to the bigger
I
scale.
switched last time because I said it based in 10 and you were confused. So I switched.
I know!
Because I'm like used to Letterboxd now, but I started in IMDb, which is a 10-star base. So in half stars,
well,
I gave this 3 out of 5.
Yeah. So I gave it 2. I gave it 2.5 out of 5.
Yeah. And I might have done 5 out of 10 if I was meaner, or if I didn't appreciate the miniature work as much as I did, and the fact that it was in color. But
somewhere out on Riverside, by the
it would have needed
Elroy
way more
Hotel.
like story and character work to like warrant more stars. Like basically, the whole film was, let's go find, something's happening. Let's go find it and shoot at it. Title. That was the film. What I just said. Someone is missing. Let's go shoot at it. Supersonic
That's the
jet.
title.
I mean, Rodan.
Someone is missing. Let's go shoot at it.
Title.
Oh,
that's
Lord.
Absolutely the title.
Oh, Lord, it's a fire.
I said, Lord Jesus, the fire. This is not the first time we've quoted that in this.
I didn't grab no shoes or nothing, Jesus. I just ran.
Oh, right. On that
Smelled
note,
like somebody was barbecuing.
we're going to wrap
the next
up
movie.
this podcast.
The next movie is Mothra, 1961. Mothra. Let's wrap this up. I'm Caleb. That is El Brian. This is
me.
El Plan.
We'll see
And
you
by
next
El
time for
Plan, I
Mothra.
mean the one about Godzilla movies. If you talk over me one more time,
This has been the one about Godzilla movies.
I will come through the OBS, over the interwebs, and into your eye. Do you know this?
I got my safety glasses on.
We'll see you on the next one. Bye.
See ya.